Hey, Mark Cuban right here, about to reveal the business side of why the streamers are paying so much for the NBA rights, the NFL rights, etc. The proof of concept has to happen on their end, because if not, there's going to be a lot less bidders the next time these TV rights come about.
And when they did that, that made everybody think, well, I'll try to do the same thing with the NBA. But now those bets from the streaming companies that are going to be broadcasting this year have got to pay off. You know, Disney, ESPN, Peacock, Amazon, they've all got to be able to get a return on that dollar, because if they don't, then the whole thing could collapse. But I'm not saying it will. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, as a business guy who tries to analyze the good news and the bad news, there's still risk associated with what's going on.
And there is definitely a lot of risk when it comes to the media side of the revenue, because these tech companies, these major tech giants, they're not necessarily as interested in sports like the leagues thought they would be. Look at Apple. They haven't really dived into many leagues. They're sitting on a bunch of cash. They really just got MLS. They gave them 250 mil. Netflix, for the most part, is in the same boat. But from the sports league so far, they proved that they want the must-see games only. And look at the big dundada of them all, Amazon. They only bid on the NBA's third package. ESPN got the A, NBC got the B, and Amazon got the C package. So you mean to tell me Amazon couldn't outbid ESPN for the premier package? But again, with these tech giants, we're in the era of analytics. And Mark Cuban right here explains how they're going to reevaluate the worth of these sports rights, and also how private equity is going to change things for fans. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
What would you say to fans that are kind of concerned with the fact that we are in this new reality where teams are now investments? They're not labors of love the way that you ran.
I mean, every team is different. It's unfortunate that that's the way it was handled. You know, I think it's going to be different. I mean, you look at the TV deal, which is the foundation of the economics of the NBA potentially going forward. And, you know, it's going to be difficult for fans to have all the subscriptions that they need. I haven't added up the numbers. I don't know if anybody has, to see how much it would cost. But, you know, to paraphrase the Warriors, it's show business. And when you're in a world where you're trying to get a multiple of revenues, the higher your revenues go, the higher the value of the team goes. And I think what people don't understand from an economics perspective is that not all teams made money. And, you know, they needed revenue sharing in order to get to break even or make a little bit of money. And I'm sure the numbers have changed in the last 2 years. But because of that, and not making money or generating cash from the operations of the team, teams often sold to private equity or other organizations just to get liquidity. So it's like, now I can finally put some money in my pocket. And, you know, I don't blame them for it, because if you're losing money all these years and trying to win, it's hard to make money and try to win unless you're in the top 3 to 5 market. And even then it can be tough. But so I just think it's going to impact fans in ways that the league is not anticipating yet. You know, I think the biggest question mark for the entire future of the NBA, and I don't think I'm being hyperbolic on this, there was a period of time up until last NFL playoffs, not this NFL playoffs, last NFL playoffs, where TV rights monies were staying about the same. Look at Major League Baseball, right? Their rights money was actually going down, and now they just signed a new deal to get them back. A lot of that is predicated, in my opinion, on the fact that when Peacock got an NFL game, their subscriptions skyrocketed. So the presumption is my perception of it is, well, if you're a subscription service, if this is emblematic of what can happen if we get, NBA or NFL rights, then it's worth paying for it, because you're going to give us the number of subscribers. And if we can just retain those subscribers and not churn them too much, then it's worth almost any amount of money. So we're going to see, come NBA and even NFL for that matter, whether or not these subscription services add subscribers, retain subscribers, or lose subscribers. That defines the entire future of professional sports.
And that's why the new crop of NBA owners are quickly looking at these teams as investment vehicles to get into real estate. All the revenue that will be generated off of that will not be part of that NBA rev share with the smaller market teams. And with the second apron rules, all the team owners are looking to stay under that cap. So that's going to be less luxury tax dollars being cycled. And these smaller market teams, they're going to have to pivot. Owning these teams are going to be much more expensive. And the large markets like the LAs, the Golden States, the New York Knicks, don't be shocked if they pivot their revenue streams in ways it can't be shared. So private equity be right there to pimp out the fans and start raising prices no matter what. Look at the Luka trade. They got rid of his ass, and just literally 2 months later, they announced that they're raising ticket prices for the following season.
And that's such a bummer because I feel like in that scenario, fans lose because we just have to spend more, to watch the team. And it becomes harder and harder. But
it does. And that was, part of the challenge I had when I was running the team. That's why I was losing money all the time. Literally we had $2 tickets for years.
Mm-hmm.
We had, $10 tickets, $12 tickets when we raised our prices 20%, right? For at least 1,000 people. We had $29 tickets for 4,000 fans, 4,000 seats when I left, right?
Those aren't available anymore.
And they paid a lot of money. So they, I can understand it. Just like with A-Rod and Mark Lowry, they paid a lot of money.
Yeah, to pay $3.5 billion for the Mavericks and then be saddled with over $150 million in luxury tax just because you gave Luka the extension. This is how business people like Patrick Dumont and his family look at the Mavericks. They're really there for that casino. Any profits from that will not be part of the NBA revenue share, and they might not even care as much about the media rights getting lower and lower.
And so I understand their desire to make the cash flow work. But as long as, teams are going up in valuation, if you have owners that incorporate private equity, people don't give money. Look, I just did a deal with Harbinger Sports to be part of a private equity group that is going to buy and sell minority interest. People don't give money to invest in as minority or majority owners in teams in order to lose money. It's too much money to just be bragging rights. Mm-hmm. It used to be, you put in $100,000, $250,000 10, 15 years ago. That's still a lot of money from somebody, but you can brag, you can get tickets, you get access. Now it's, okay, are they going to put in $25 million to own a smidgen? Is private equity going to put in $1 billion in order to, have a minority interest and with no say in operations? And if you are a part of private equity investor, a special purpose vehicle type thing, you want a return because there's only 20 people in the world that can write a check for an NBA team anymore. Even when you see people with huge net worths, they're 26 in the Forbes 400, they're worth $90 billion. They ain't got $90 billion in cash, mm-hmm. And they'd have to get off of assets, et cetera, which isn't always easy. Some can, but
what are you really saying about Forbes, Mark? They fucking counted El Chapo's money somehow.
So the point of all this is we're in new territory because, even at a $2 billion valuation, somebody could afford it. Ballmer set that path. Even like when I was looking at the Texas Rangers, right? The reason the people who ended up buying the Lakers now, Walters and Todd Bowley, were able to come in for the Dodgers, and the same thing happened with the Rangers. They just kind of got prepaid off the TV money so they can use it to buy $1 billion team. And that changed the economics. Now the economics are beyond that. That's why I think the NBA is not going to expand because the economics just don't work.
Yeah, that expansion looked like it's on hold. NBA Europe looked like it got the green light. But don't be shocked if the Pelicans end up being the team that moves to either Seattle or Vegas.
What would you say to Mavs fans who, Mavs fans can say whatever they want about you, but they know at the end of the day you cared. And I know for a fact whenever the Mavs lose, you don't sleep. Like no. You're pissed, What would you say to Mavs fans who are concerned that the new ownership group, and this isn't just specifically about Patrick Dumont or whatever, but like that guy thinks the finals are called the championship games. Like what would you say to Mavs fans who are concerned that the new ownership group might not really care as much as you do? They do?
They do care. That I can say with 100% certainty. I mean, I still talk to Patrick a fair amount.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he doesn't show emotion like I do. That's just not his style, but he does care. And, you know, he cares when we lose. He's spending time to learn. He's learned a ton in time, you know. Now I can talk to him about analytics. I can talk to him about our roster. I can talk to him about 5 out versus making 3, you know, decisions that are made.
Can you tell him to play more 5 out, please?
What's that?
Can you tell him to play more 5 out?
Well, it's going to be tough because we don't have enough 3-point shooters, which
I
is
know,
part of the
which is-
problem, right?
That's,
And so that was
I've
the
spent a long
conversation.
time complaining about
We
that,
spent
man.
a lot of hours over the summer talking about just that.
Well, yeah, and that's Patrick and I have talked about that, right? You know, it's kind of a triangle. It's not like Nico and I talking about it. It's Nico talking to Patrick and I talking to and me talking to Patrick, and he kind of it's his job to, you know, assimilate all that and make a decision.
And that's the problem with the Mavericks right there. And you're going to have to add Jason Kidd to that triangle. That is a major issue that Dumont's going to have to correct. That information has to be streamlined. It seems like no one wants the responsibility when shit backfires. Notice that was the same sort of communication line with this whole, should we trade Luka, should we not? Nobody really could answer who firmly made that decision.
But I know he cares. I have no doubt in my mind that he wants to win a championship. But he's not me, you know, and he's going to do it his own way.
Going back to private equity real quick, would you say it was more the NBA chasing higher and higher valuations, or was it private equity looking at the NBA and looking at franchises and seeing them as a vehicle that they could also target?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. Because
And like when did that start really? You know, I guess kind of with the, you know, the VC explosion.
probably
2010s.
more 5-6 years ago that I noticed the conversations turning more to valuations.
That sounds very familiar. Seems like when they seen Steve Ballmer purchase the team and how he was able to acquire that land in downtown LA. He was an overall positive for the whole NBA. Even the lowly Charlotte Hornets was able to sell their franchise for $3 billion.
Because some of the people who had bought teams had private equity backgrounds. And so they would bring up, I would bring up in the meetings, how are we going to, we're going to price fans out, yeah, it's show business, but they're going to be customers gone, right? It's going to be hard to replace them, da-da-da-da-da. And it would be like, okay, Mark, what are our valuations at now? And it's like, well, Forbes says this about the teams, yada, 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 right? And so I think it was 5-6 years ago that probably started happening. And I raised my voice. I was like, this is bullshit. Yeah, I know we're a business. Yeah, I know we want to make money, but teams aren't making money. Why aren't teams making money? What are things we can do? Like one of the things I would hammer all the time was social media. We dominate social media, but it's a smidgen of revenue for us relative to TV. Well, there's not money there. I think they need us. Why are we not going to get more money there? And then when Bally's fell apart, it was like, why aren't we going, I would say to them, go to Time Warner, and because I've been in this industry and I understand the technology, I understand the elements. And I was like, go to Time Warner, and since TNT and TBS are going to lose the rights, right? They can work like the Weather Channel. You know how the Weather Channel, whatever city you're in, it shows you the weather for that channel.
Sure.
Well, let them buy up the rights as Bally's falls out, and say, okay, Dallas, we'll buy your rights, but only people in Dallas can see it, because that helps them sell more subscriptions, right, to traditional cable and whatever they stream. It's just, thanks, Mark. Next. Amazon did a great job with the NFL. Pretty much everybody's got it. You don't have to pay for it specifically, right? So if you have Prime, I think Amazon's a great partner. But the challenge is, if these subscriptions don't pick up or don't reach the numbers that Peacock, et cetera, need, then it's going to default back to Amazon and Netflix being the only ones left. Maybe Apple. And maybe ESPN, to be determined,
Well,
right?
there's never been more.
Damn, that's a bad lineup right there. First of all, Apple, Netflix, Amazon, they have all the cash in the world, but they have shown that they are not all in on just buying a whole season worth of games from these leagues. The NBA, NFL, etc., they're just add-ons for these tech companies to keep people in their ecosystems. If there is an eventual fallout because of the subscriptions not going up, There won't be too many bidders left, and that's why the owners are pivoting to real estate and private equity.
To be determined,
Well,
right?
there's never been more uncertainty about regional TV in the NBA's
Well, it's
history
gone.
than there is.
It's gone. It's gone. Right? Local TV is okay and good, but the networks like Tenga just merged, right? It wasn't a merger of strength. And they've got great, smart people there that are busting their ass to sell, et cetera. But it's hard to get people to turn on a TV, in a traditional TV at the same time, and just streaming from a team, it's hard to get people just to buy a product that's going to be for one team. And so, if it comes down to just, let's just say Disney, Netflix, and Amazon, maybe Apple, but they're changing their mind on sports. They're not going to compete with each other the way the subscription services have this past couple of years and the past couple of deals, in my opinion.
Facts, and I believe Apple is not going to compete at all. They are very brand conscious. Unless you're Oprah Winfrey, you have to be like one of these mega universal figureheads that won't upset any part of the masses. As long as you're quiet, they might partner up with you. But NBA players are very vocal and they're very culturally relevant. So Apple might not want to tie themselves to that.
So to sum up this conversation, and then we're going to hit a break.
Yeah.
But I guess, what do you say to the fan that says this doesn't feel like a family, it doesn't feel like a family business anymore? I guess the idea is just sorry,
I'm
that's
sorry.
not what the NBA is anymore.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's just, you see with Wick selling, you see with Genie selling, you see with me selling, you saw with MJ selling, teams, the people that we've come to learn and know that have owned these teams for 20 plus years. I'm not 21, I'm not 41 anymore, right? And so a lot of the individual owners are going to age out, and so it's going to change. And who is there to replace us, right?
Private equity, real estate moguls, tech titans, casino titans. That's so far who we've seen come in almost in a gold rush after the pandemic. It's as if they smelled the blood in the water, with a lot of these small-time owners not necessarily being ready during the pandemic for a complete stoppage of just revenue and fans coming in these arenas. That's really one of the trickle-down effects. The NBA almost for 2 seasons missed out on a lot of revenue.
At these prices, the Larry Ellisons of the world, the guy who owns NVIDIA, whatever, they're not 21 either. And maybe the next generation of trillionaires from AI will come in and start buying teams, and that'll change things. And I hope so, because then there's an opportunity to put fans first instead of valuations first. But that is a challenge. It really, really, really is.
So it is what it is. Can't stop change, but unfortunately for a lot of these owners and private equity entities coming in, they do have to understand the audience has a lot more options than in years past. The NBA still has to address the elephant in the room. The demographic of those who are under the age of 18 do not necessarily consume the NBA in the same way. Shit, they don't even have the same interest in the league as a whole. It's just way too many options for them to sit around and wait for their favorite team to rebuild for a couple seasons, then maybe fight for a championship.